Matra MS11 car from Golden Era, the first images of which we saw last summer, arrived at Little Bear Slots at the beginning of March. What a car! The level of detail is absolutely breathtaking. Kostas Zingovic has done an excellent job of reproduction on this model. It was understood that he inaugurated a new series called Gold with an even higher level of detail. This model represents the car of Jean-Pierre Beltoise, entered in the European Grand Prix held at the Nurburgring on August 4th, 1968, and won by Jackie Stewart in the second Matra. The whole car is so well captured, it feels like you're visiting the Matra Museum in Romorantin. The colour blue of France is as close as possible to reality, which has always caused problems on the different Matra models offered in reproduction. What is most striking is the engine, its exhausts and the level of detail of its injection system. What an extraordinary job Golden Era has done here. If the overall proportions are faithful, it is above all the driver who strikes with his realism. Jean-Pierre Beltoise's head is the right size, and his face is represented in a very realistic way. It is therefore a far cry from the polycars with their drivers with bulging eyes, as if they were stunned to have managed to negotiate the previous curve. Not mentioning the Scalextric or NSR drivers either. The cockpit inside which Jean-Pierre is installed is also worthy of a work of art. So there's not much to do on this model except admire it. Once again, we are with this slot car at a level of representation never equalled, except perhaps by Osterero. The great strength of Golden Era is that it has not neglected any detail. It is perfect everywhere, where others offer remarkable models but often marred by a few approximations. When it comes to setup, we kept it very minimal. The Matra has been partially opened to install ballast at the front. You know that we appreciate having the guide well supported on the Vallee des Senarts track. The car weighs in at a very light 56 grams, which is in par with polycar cars, less than 5 grams heavier actually. A little bit of lubrication of the bearings and crown gear. A short stint on the braking bench and off you go. Let's go immerse ourselves in the heart of this summer of 1968 and the rise of the Matra Formula One team. While France is recovering from the events of May, Jean-Pierre Beltoise, Jackie Stewart, Ken Tyrrell and Jean-Luc Lagardère have their own agendas in the Eiffel Mountains soaked with rain.
Beltoise's Matra created a sensation when it arrived at the Nurburgring equipped with a movable wing. Located above the engine, it was powered by a miniature engine borrowed from a missile. Reputed to weigh only 3 kilograms, this device allowed the pilot to vary the inclination of the wing. It was not B-connected in the race for reliability reasons, but represented a significant example of Matra's specific approach to technology.
In 1964, Matra, in search of diversification, bought the manufacturer René Bonnet and set out to conquer the automotive world with a rebadged jet. Jean-Luc Lagardère, at the head of Matra, decided to engage Matra in motorsport to benefit from the spin-offs in terms of image. René Bonnet had already started with a commitment to endurance racing with the jet and its modified version, the eara jet, without success, except for an energy performance index at the 1963 24 Hours of Le Mans. Matra will make a clean sweep of this past and launch its own sports program from a blank sheet. At the very end of 1964, when René Bonnet had just been taken over, Matra's sporting program had not yet been defined. Jets were timidly entered in rallying, but the competition from the Alpine A110S was too strong. Matra asked Jacques Hubert to imagine a car capable of competing. He imagined a car built around a tubular chassis with running gear close to those used in F3, all covered with a jet body enlarged for the occasion. Thus was born the Matra MS610. Right after, during the winter of 1964 to 1965, Jacques Hubert was the main architect of the design of the MS1, although it was Jean Cobet, an engineer recruited on the recommendation of Jean-Luc Lagardère, who was appointed as official manager. Though offices were only delimited by chipboard partitions that did not provide any waterproofing, it was in these conditions that the team was responsible for giving birth to the little marvel resting on the immense technical resources and vast technological knowledge of Matra. The atmosphere, moreover, is as icy as the temperature. Hubert, who had remained faithful to René Bonnet, was indeed very upset about his collaboration with Cobbett. He was fired at the end of the 1965 season, but was immediately replaced by another graduate engineer, Jean Hébert, which convinced Hubert not to stay at Matra for too long. In short, to put it bluntly, this rudimentary design office is a mess. And it was far from coinciding with the triumphant high-tech image that Matra would nevertheless very quickly succeed in imposing. Despite all the above, this team will design from the outset a car which, after a few glitches mainly attributable to the terribly tight deadlines that it will be forced to respect, will dominate its rivals. It was not so much the effect of a miracle as of the technical option adopted for the construction of the chassis, which would prove to be simply brilliant. Those of the competing F3 cars were either multitubular or monocoque made of sheets folded in the shape of a bathtub, the sides forming pontoons containing flexible fuel skins. Matra decided not only to adopt the monocoque option, but to go further. The side boxes, made of sheet steel, will be joined by a series of transverse partitions located along their entire length, and the whole will be assembled by riveting, thus forming a homogeneous structure that is practically non-deformable. With the added advantage of ensuring better stability of the weight center, since the bulkheads prevent the movement of fuel during braking and accelerations. On the other hand, this partitioning dividing the pontoons into small compartments prohibits the installation of flexible skins in the pontoons. These will therefore directly constitute the tanks themselves, and their tightness will be ensured by the application of an internal resin coating, according to a process developed for rockets. To whom can we attribute the paternity of this idea, which was indeed the basis of the success of all Matra single-seaters until Stewart's world title at the wheel of his MS-80 in 1969? It was my decision, says Lagardère, because I wanted a monocoque with curved sides that was more elegant and stiffer than the others, and because I knew that we would be able to build it thanks to the know-how of Engin's Matra in aeronautics. I wanted us to be able to see our technological superiority from the outset. We were therefore immediately credible. But Hubert also claims it, at least in part. At Bonnet's, I had the opportunity to closely examine a Lotus Formula 3 from Ford France. Its pilot complained that it lacked rigidity, and I told myself that if the hull was twisting, it was because it wasn't compartmentalized enough. At the same time, I had seen in an English magazine a ghost view of a BRM Formula One car with bulkheads on the hull, and I was inspired by that of the Matra. In any case, while this technology will undoubtedly produce extraordinary results, it will involve a much higher construction cost. But in 1965, Matra would be, along with Alpine, the only brand to enter Formula 3. And having neither the need nor the intention to sell its racing cars, and therefore to ensure the profitability of the operation like its British competitors, Lagardère did not seek to save money. On the other hand, this technique also led to a much longer and more complex manufacturing process, which in turn put the small team in difficulty. For example, an attempt was first made to weld the sheets together, which proved impossible without creating unacceptable deformations. Riveting was then chosen, but the purchasing clerk procured rivets for aluminum sheet. Never mind, it was too late to change, they were popped on the steel as they were. 3 months later, when they start to severe, they will have to be replaced.
Attracted by Matra's stated ambition to reach the top, Bernard Boyer joined Matra in the autumn of 1965 as head of production. Matra, who was thinking big with a move to Formula One in 1968, could not help but tickle Boyer's thirst for creation, who was quickly promoted to head of structures. The first Matra Formula One car, the MS10 with a Ford Cosworth engine, was put into service on the 17th of March at the Brands Hatch Circuit, England, for the Race of Champions. In practice, Stewart set the third fastest time and thus earned his place on the front row again. But it was the two new McLaren and BRM that preceded the Matra. There was a problem with traction. The Matra is also a little clumsy on this winding and hilly track. At the finish, disappointed to have been left behind, Stewart was gloomy and his comments unflattering for his new car. But almost 2 months separate this half-hearted debut from the first Grand Prix of the European season. This long delay can be used to carry out numerous private test sessions and improve the handling of the MS10. "It's too heavy, lazy on corner entry, and takes too much roll," Stewart complained. Bowyer will begin to remedy this gradually over the course of the season. During this period of his first approach to Formula One, Stewart's contribution has been considerable, not only because of his talent and this experience he had already acquired, of course, but also because of his rigor in the development process. For example, he was the only one of our drivers who could accurately describe to me how the car behaved when entering, in the middle, and at the exit of the corner. Thanks to this exceptional analytical capacity, we understood and progressed very quickly. And also thanks to Bowyer's past as a pilot, which allows him to assimilate Stewart's driving impressions and descriptions beforehand, and then to transcribe them into technical terms that can be used by the design office downstream. This pivotal position allows for constructive dialogue, and this was particularly the case with Stewart because he had sound judgment and didn't lead us down the wrong tracks. The Scottish champion, for his part, will realize that with Matra's technicians, he is not dealing with ungrates. The reduction in the weight of the unsprung masses at the front and the fitting of a lighter gearbox will soon make the MS10 more competitive, although it will never go below 560 kilograms, which is 60 kilograms above the limit imposed by the rules. "We have always tended to build a little heavy, which was mainly due to the fact that Lagardère pushed us a lot to make solid buildings," Bowyer admits. At the German Grand Prix, the rain would be Stewart's accomplice in his chase behind Hill in the championship. The Dunlop tires will be sovereign. But in addition, Stewart will achieve a feat that will go down in legend. In the heart of the dark Eiffel forest, the fog that day refused to lift, to the point that from the stands, it was difficult to distinguish the stands facing them. Dropped on the diabolical slide of the Nurburgring, which hides its countless traps in a cottony mist, the Formula One drivers could barely guess the meanders of the track.